Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Conservative, not bitter indeed, my friends. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. I want to start by talking a little bit about Iran. You might have seen headlines or some reactions from Trump, responses from Trump, where he's optimistic about Iran progressing to a deal to end the war. I just want to talk about that briefly. Cory Booker, that's Spartacus out there, the one who, the great sophist in the U.S. Senate. You'll remember him as the one who engaged in a fake filibuster. It was a real filibuster, but it was about nothing. Acting like he was some sort of just a great American statesman throughout history for breaking the record for the longest so-called filibuster. He's out there saying if Democrats win the midterm elections, they're coming after the Supreme Court. That's worth noting. Also, rhinos are in danger here. I might talk a little bit about that, time permitting, as well. That's the direction that we're headed today. If you want to help direct what we talk about here on this program or share your thoughts and opinions about what we say, I welcome you to do so, my friends. 317-785-1030. That's how you can do that. Or you can email me, Todd at ToddHuffShow.com. I should say. Thoughts, questions, feedback, all of that is accepted there, my friends. Let's face it, there's a lot of companies out there that don't share your Christian values. The good news is that you do not have to invest in them. I don't know if people realize that, but you don't. You don't have to invest in them. At 48 Financial, they specialize in biblically responsible investing. They'll help you screen out companies that go against your faith, your values, and create a plan that's tailored to your specific goals. They handle all the heavy lifting. They do all the work to make sure they do the research. They do all the back-end stuff to help you know whether or not you are funding organizations that are in perfect alignment, partial alignment, or who are absolutely the opposite of being in perfect alignment with your faith and your values. All you have to do is enter some answers to some basic questions and complete the assessment that takes just a couple of minutes at 48financial.com/Todd. Again, that's 48financial.com/Todd. 48 Financial, because your values matter, and my friends, so does your money. Just a few words on Iran really quickly. Headline here, the Epic Times: Trump says talks with Iran show progress. Deal to end war very possible. The president says he has had good talks over the last 24 hours with Iran, and it's, quote, very possible the two countries will make a deal to end the war. This very well may happen, and I, of course, hope that it does. We cannot be, and I trust Trump in this regard, just to be clear, but we cannot be negotiating an end to this just to end this. We have to achieve the objective here. And of course, the ultimate objective is that Iran is not on the threshold of having nuclear weapons, that Iran is not a nuclear state, because Iran is run by maniacal lunatics. We've been through this, who believe they have the permission of Allah to annihilate through nuclear means or any means, those who are deemed enemies of the Islamic State. If you're a Jewish state, you're a target of the Islamic State of Iran. If you're a Christian nation, which of course we were founded on concepts of Christian ideas and beliefs and so forth. It's rooted, it's everywhere in our nation's history for people to see. I used to intern, by the way, at a place called the Christian Defense Fund. It's no longer in existence, but we helped back at the Christian Defense Fund people learn about America's Christian heritage. It doesn't mean that we're a theocracy like Iran is, but this nation, of course, was built by Christians and built upon Christian concepts. We deny that, but regardless, Christian nation or not, the Islamic Republic of Iran deems the United States the great Satan. They believe that they are justified, at least the maniacal leaders do, in virtually any means necessary to defeat or destroy the United States and Israel. They cannot be allowed to have a weapon, a nuclear weapon. And if we can achieve that, if we can actually achieve it and not just focus on getting a piece of paper signed and having a pinky promise and some handshakes or whatever else, if we can get to that point, then absolutely that's a good thing to end this war. But just ending it, as politicians often do. I remember Biden back in 2000, when was that? 2000, the Afghanistan debacle. He wanted the end of the war in the headline saying that he had ended the longest war in U.S. history, and he actually abandoned at one point in time. It was like 15,000 Americans. It was a debacle. It was done absolutely atrociously. People died as a result, just because he wanted the headline. And I'm not suggesting Trump is after that. Trump is a different type of politician. Most politicians just want the accolades, and whatever happens regarding the details of a particular negotiated settlement or whatever is kind of incidental to these folks, because they want, again, they just want to be able to say that they ended a war. I don't believe that Trump's in that camp. But what I am wanting to say to you here today is that these announcements and the news on the war in Iran, just be prepared. It could end at any time. Trump's a master of this, but we also may go through a prolonged period of time of ups and downs, gas prices. Who knows if they've hit their high? Hopefully they have. Hopefully they come down. Hopefully the Strait of Hormuz is back under control, that there's the free flow of oil, and that world markets can stop panicking about these things. But again, we may be on an up and down roller coaster for a while. I've tried to explain these things. I've talked a lot. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. It's called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And that is exactly 100% what we're watching play out in real time for all the world to see. That's all this up and down. And it's just so interesting to me because, the media, when they talk about Trump saying, something's going to happen, or, he gives out this grave threat to wipe Iran. He gave out another one recently. Grave threat to the Islamic Republic of Iran. They talk about that as though Trump is, mentally unfit for office. In fact, I saw Piers Morgan was interviewing. I actually was thinking of playing it on the show yesterday, but I just, there's other things that I want to get to. But Piers Morgan was interviewing, I believe, a psychologist who's out there saying that Trump he's mentally unfit for office. You've seen people like this. He's talking about the dangers of Trump and just his unfitness for office. He was asked by Piers Morgan, did you have the same concerns about Biden? And he said, well, they hid those from us. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Friends, I remember on this program, if you've listened to this program, you remember me talking about this. You remember witnessing Biden during his term. I remember talking about Biden's unfit to serve before he won the 2020 election. I remember this. We used to make T-shirts mocking Biden. Remember when he told the guy, I mean, it's not funny for the guy in the wheelchair, but he told a guy in the wheelchair to stand up, Chuck. Oh, what am I talking about? Chuck can't stand up. That's what he said. I mean, this guy, at one point, it might have been gaffes for Biden. At another point, he crossed the threshold of gaffes into complete senility. And we act as though these wannabe liberal elitists who want to have your respect for their medical expertise, talking about someone they've never diagnosed or had personal meetings with, and all the stuff, all the testing and everything. They want you to just believe in them because they've got the credentials. Meanwhile, the rest of us are watching President Biden, when he was in office, literally stumble and stammer his way through the day. I mean, on a daily basis. You cannot be serious to compare the administrations between Trump and his ability to manage the country with Biden and expect to be treated seriously. Those two things are nowhere near the same things. What Trump is doing as it pertains to Iran is he is, again, living out Sun Tzu's The Art of War. I mean, he is deceiving the enemy. He's saying something's going to happen. He's giving deadlines, and then he's negotiating. He's keeping them off balance. And this is so absolutely understandable and predictable for those who want to actually understand what's going on, but the media doesn't. And the talking heads, the self-appointed elite in the ruling class, the radical left's guests that they have out there on programs, they do not care about the truth. What they care about is advancing a political agenda. And again, they'll do whatever it takes, as long as it takes them, so long as it takes Trump away from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's, my friends, what they're after. And so this is what we have. But just be prepared for Iran to be up and down. It could end at any time. Just because it ends doesn't mean it can't be restarted as well. But this has to be, Iran has to be taken care of in Trump's term. It is something that's concerning to me because this, of course, this problem has existed basically since the inception of the Islamic Republic of Iran back in 1979. And I'm not sure other presidents have the strength of will to stand up and to ensure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. I hope that there are. There probably are some that fall into that category. But anyway, this needs to be taken care of. Just be ready for more ups and downs because, my friends, that's absolutely what we are probably going to see here over the course of time. So that's what I wanted to say about Iran. I want to shift gears here, my friends, in just a moment. But if you're curious about Kratom or just trying to figure out who you can trust, take a look at Christopher's Organic Botanicals, family-run company. They offer natural, lab-tested Kratom, not the synthetic garbage that's given Kratom a bad name. Kratom, well, real Kratom is responsibly sourced. Real Kratom is tested for purity. And that's what Christopher's Organic Botanicals is all about. They work directly with farmers in Indonesia. They follow the same traditions that have been trusted for generations. There's no gimmicks. There's no shortcuts. It's just clean. A clean, honest alternative for people looking for a more natural way to support their health. So do your research, and once you're comfortable giving this product a try, start with the Kratom Starter Pack. It's a great way to begin. Coupon code Todd Huff will save you 10% on your first order. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. That's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency. All right. So let's shift gears here a little bit as I look at the clock to see which direction I want to go here. I mentioned earlier in the program that Democrats are out there making it known that the Supreme Court is in their metaphorical crosshairs. The Supreme Court is a target for the Democrats should they win, and hopefully they don't, but should they win the 2026 midterm elections. Cory Booker, who you might know as Spartacus, you might know him as the senator who has the now longest fake filibuster in the history of our nation. I mean, this guy is a, this is not personal, but it's just clownish. It's clownish with this guy, how he behaves. It's clownish, the sorts of things he says, the things that he engages in. It is political sophistry. It's just a sideshow to me. But it works with a lot of people. A lot of people like Cory Booker. But he was on with Chris Hayes on the MSNBC's, what's his program called? All In with Chris Hayes, I think, some such thing. The radical leftist Chris Hayes. And he's asking Cory Booker about the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court, as you well know, is the head, if you will, the head of the judiciary, the head of the judicial branch. The Supreme Court has a legitimate role, obviously, in this nation. But I would tell you, the average person could not tell you what the role of the Supreme Court is. The role of the Supreme Court, my friends, one way of looking at it is to say that the Supreme Court is the representation, if you will, of the Constitution. So you have Congress, which is the will of the people. These are elected representatives. And initially, as I've shared on this program before, the House of Representatives represented the people. The Senate actually represented the states and the state legislatures, but we did away with that because, well, I think we're idiots. But anyway, now senators and members of Congress are both directly elected by people in their respective states. You have the president who's the head of the executive branch. Now, he's the only person directly elected by everyone. I guess you could say the vice president is too, but that's a direct result of being chosen by the president to be on the ballot with him in the general election. So this is, but the president's the kind of the CEO running the government, as far as not representing, voting on budgets and that sort of thing certainly can influence it, but to run the government, to deal with foreign countries and dignitaries, to be the commander-in-chief of the military, and to execute the laws that have been passed by Congress. That's kind of, again, there's a lot more to it, but that's a snapshot. And the Supreme Court is supposed to be the voice of the Constitution and an unbiased voice of the laws that have been passed, so that when particular cases come their way, when there are questions about the law, when there are questions about government authority, what a constitutional a phrase in the Constitution, a clause in the Constitution means, what a particular amendment means, they're supposed to interpret that and apply that and make sure that the law is being applied correctly. And that's what's supposed to happen. They're not supposed to be implementing their own personal beliefs from the bench. That's not their job. They're not elected In fact, they're not even elected at all. They're appointed by the President of the United States, and they are confirmed or denied by the Senate. And that's how this process has always been. But people misunderstand the court. Some people see the court as a safeguard if they lose in the political world. If some piece of legislation gets passed that they're against, they're hoping the Supreme Court stops it, not because it's against the law necessarily, but because some majority of justices on the Supreme Court simply don't like it. That's not the role of the Supreme Court. That, by definition, is what we call judicial activism, and it has been a real problem on the Supreme Court for a long time. But contrary to what these clowns and lunatics on the left are out there saying, the current court is not engaged in judicial activism. The current court is actually undoing things to a certain extent. They are correcting things that has been implemented by an activist Supreme Court. In fact, the greatest example of that is the issue of abortion. The Supreme Court in 1973 in the Roe versus Wade case arbitrarily made up a bunch of rules. 9 old white guys in black robes told women what they could do with their bodies, and they made stuff up, just completely made it up. And the left loved it because it benefited their ideology. It benefited the culture of killing babies. They love this stuff because they're, of course, built upon a godless and morally bankrupt worldview and ideology. But they loved it. They loved what it allowed them to do. They loved that they could deal with the consequences in any way that they deemed necessary of their lifestyle choices. Engage in as much sex as you want. If you get pregnant along the way, no worries. You can just murder your unborn child. What a nice, convenient thing. And all the while telling women lies straight from the pits of hell that this is not a child, this is a human embryo, this is a fetus, whatever else they've said. They said, no, it's your body, your choice. And again, as I listen to those words and I think about what's been done to millions of unborn children, people have literally chosen momentary pleasure, sexual pleasure, over the lives of other human beings. In fact, murdering them, in fact. It is a just despicable thing. But I'll talk more about this after the break, but I've got to take a time out, my friends. Sit tight. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. You know, anytime I talk about abortion, which we talked about just as an example here of an actual example of when the Supreme Court acted well outside its authority, its role in our constitutional republic. The Roe versus Wade decision of 1973, we're talking about abortion. I want to make it clear. I know that this is a very, very emotional topic for people. People are largely incapable of talking about abortion. And candidly, based upon what I said last segment, I understand. I mean, I said abortion is murder. I don't apologize for that. But I do want to say this, and I have no interest in watering down what I said at all. But I do want to say this for those who have engaged in an abortion at some point. My words are not designed to heap guilt upon you. They're not. Now, some people will want me to cause people to have guilt. I know you already have guilt. I do. I know that you have guilt because you've been convicted of that. And I would say to respond to that conviction the right way. And that is to seek forgiveness. That is to take this to God. God, the God of the Bible, is a forgiving God. What you did is terrible. Listen, I've sinned too. That's what the Bible says. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. It was terrible, and it ended a life, and we have to accept that and come to grips with that. This isn't designed to heap guilt upon you, but what it is designed to do is proclaim the truth. And the truth is that it was a terrible thing that happened, a terrible choice that you may have made, but you can seek forgiveness and redemption. That's what we all get through Jesus. He's ready and willing to begin the process of healing and forgiving. It doesn't take away the ugliness of what the decision was, but God can redeem you from that. He's redeemed me from some bad things as well, my friends. So I just wanted to say that. It's not about heaping insult or opening up an old wound or trying to make people feel the guilt, because you already feel it. That's what we all know. In fact, there used to be a woman at our church. She ran a group, and women would get together, women who had had abortions, and they would get together and try to heal. This is something that's never talked about, or it's very rarely talked about. We talk about it sometimes, but it's very rarely talked about. The anguish, the guilt, the grief, you can say mental health. I think it's spiritual health that's there's a very bad result that comes from choosing to have an abortion, and it's not talked about. Instead, we have lunatics on the godless left get behind podiums in front of groups of women and celebrating how many abortions they've had and talking about how they love it. I mean, it's just sick and disgusting. And we're supposed to think that's liberating, that's empowering. It's destructive to women. Some women never get over this. They never get over this. And I'm trying to prevent that. But the court, going back to the court, they did not try to prevent it. In fact, they gave women some blueprint that they made up out of whole cloth. They just made it up. First trimester, second trimester, the viability of the fetus. I remember having these debates in college about these things. It's just pure sophistry, not the job of the Supreme Court. They just made it up. They were presented a problem. They said, we want women to be able to kill their unborn babies. They made up some right to privacy. You know how crazy that is? To say that it's okay to commit a crime, even murdering another human, because it's something that you did in private. We can't be serious about these things. But my friends, they were. But that was what judicial activism looked like. That is an example. 50-some years ago, 53 years ago now, that's the example of where the court went off the rails. But see, today, when the Supreme Court fixes those things, as they did a few years ago, that's considered the problem from people on the left. So here he is, Cory Spartacus, sitting down with Chris Hayes. I just want you to listen to this conversation. They're not going to talk specifically about the Roe decision. Instead, they're going to talk about the Supreme Court doing things today that apparently Congress needs to step in and stop. But what I would argue is that the Supreme Court was doing things well outside its constitutional role, well outside its role, a long time ago. I mean, people like me, I know Mark Levin wrote a book, I forget the name of it, but basically it was a book about 9 men in black robes, 9 people in black robes that basically just made up all sorts of things, interpreted, didn't interpret the law. They simply inserted their own political viewpoints on Americans through the Supreme Court, saying it's a law, nothing you can do about it, no debate, no vote, no anything. They just made their decisions and went about their way, and we were supposed to just simply nod in agreement saying, yeah, that's how this is supposed to be done, when in reality, it's not. And the court now is actually fulfilling its constitutional duties and responsibilities much better than it has been doing throughout its existence. Well, at least I should say in modern history. I can't go back to the Times and talk about the early courts, because it's, nobody knows anything about that. Just average people. And B, we need to use modern examples to kind of to tie this together so people can understand the differences. So, but there's examples, a lot of examples throughout the history of the court where the court got it wrong, stepped outside their bounds, whatever. Anyway, so Spartacus is on here with Chris Hayes saying that they need to do something about the Supreme Court. They, Democrats, if they're elected. I want you to listen to this exchange.
Increasingly, I hear from not just Democratic wonks or people in the legal world, but sort of average Democratic voters, primary voters, plugged-in people, but the kind of folks who are paying attention, that something has to be done about the court. That we've gone through other periods of time where the court was out of control. Go read the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and they're all about the court and what the court had done in Dred Scott. Do you feel that way? Is this a priority if Democrats regain power, that something must be done? Some change has to come to the way that this court currently functions?
Chris, we're pitching this, and you said Democrats. Again, these are issues that most Americans agree on. Most Americans are against partisan gerrymandering. Most Americans believe that we should have fair representation. The Supreme Court is another example of an area where most Americans agree.
I had to stop it there. Most people are against partisan gerrymandering. That's, again, remember the ballot question in Virginia? We talked about this a few weeks ago when it brought up the issue of redistricting. Talked about changing their state constitution. This is being challenged legally. One of the reasons because of the way the question was actually framed. But if you read it on the ballot made it sound like, hey, do you want to do something that's fair and good for all the people, or do you not want to get involved and let Donald Trump destroy America? That's basically the way that the question was written on the referendum in Virginia. Kind of the same thing here. People don't want partisan gerrymandering. That sounds good, but how in the world do you determine what that is? And by the way, gerrymandering is not simply changing the lines. Gerrymandering, I've said this until I'm blue in the face, but some people just refuse to get it. And Spartacus doesn't care. He just wants people to be misled. But gerrymandering is when you draw a district that's incredibly odd-shaped. The term actually referred to a salamander. That's what it was actually comparing in the district to the original term back from 1810 or 1812. And the governor of Massachusetts at the time, his name was Governor Gerry. And so the term gerrymander, combining salamander and his name, became a popular term to describe districts that were drawn that were very oddly shaped. You go and look at the districts that are oddly shaped in the U.S. The most oddly shaped districts that we'll see are blue districts. And it has to be that way, my friends, because Republicans are in the more rural areas. They don't need to slice and dice cities up real precisely, like Virginia did, by the way, and get as many districts grabbing pieces of, say, metropolitan Washington, D.C., Springfield, Virginia, and so forth, Arlington, Virginia. They don't need to do that. They can just draw boxes, and the Republicans can accomplish their mission of having more Republican-leaning districts. But see, the truth is that there's no objectively fair way to draw these districts. It is necessarily a partisan political process. I got to take a break, though. Quick time out. Back here in just a minute. And I know I get tired of having to say the same thing, too. They either don't know and don't care, or they're deliberately just lying. It's probably the latter more times than not, although sometimes these people genuinely don't know anything that they're talking about, so I wouldn't completely dismiss the first option there. But Cory Spartacus, as I was talking about last segment, talking about partisan gerrymandering. There's not a single person who's going to say that they're in favor of that, but if you use language to describe the issue correctly, and you say, do states have the authority, the prerogative to draw their districts as they see fit per the Constitution? The answer is yes. It's a political process. I've been through this ad nauseum, my friends. But the way that these questions are framed and the way that they're talked about in political discourse in this country is going to shape how people feel about those issues. I'm going to try to play more of this Cory Booker's response about the Supreme Court here in just a moment, my friends. Before I do that, you ever wish you had a whole team to help manage your financial life? That's the beauty of family office services at Full Suite Wealth. Their experienced advisors bring together everything from high-level investment management, that includes private equity, private credit, option strategies, to complex legal needs. All those things customized for you, my friends. It's like having a family office just for you with people who know your story, your goals, your vision. It's about helping you plan for the long haul. And if you're serious about doing that, check them out, fullsuitewealth.com. That's fullsuitewealth.com. Jason and the team will take great care of you at Full Suite Wealth. Build your legacy, secure your future. I'm going to back this up just a little bit and go back to Spartacus here, responding about the Supreme Court. Just back it up just a few seconds. And we're going to pick up, again, Spartacus talking about Democrats targeting the Supreme Court should they win in the 2026 midterms.
Are against partisan gerrymandering. Most Americans believe that we should have fair representation. The Supreme Court is another example of an area where most Americans agree. Most Americans agree that the highest court in the land should...
I mean, who's against fair representation? But what does that even mean? I put the word fair in front of anything, and people are going to nod in agreement in the majority of instances. But he continues here.
Have the lowest of ethics laws, and that billionaires can routinely shower Supreme Court justices with gifts, from mobile homes to fancy, expensive vacations. We all know that's wrong. In addition, most Americans agree that Supreme Court justices shouldn't sit on those benches until they're so ailing, just hoping they can hold on, well past perhaps even senility.
Who's your example?
The president lines up with their jurisprudence philosophies and they can leave the bench. That's why term limits are a good thing as well. And so, yes, we have to think hard about how we're going to reform the court and bring it back into alignment, especially because they're continuing to do...
Back into alignment with what? Said he wants to bring it back into alignment. Back into alignment with what? The Constitution? See, that's what's happening now. I'm not saying there's nothing that needs to be addressed with the Supreme Court. Maybe they should update their ethics, their code of ethics on the court. Fine. But when it comes to what the court is doing, they're actually fixing decades of judicial abuse that has existed in this country. Senator Spartacus, he continues here.
Things like we saw last week eviscerate years and years and years of progress and throw us back to those dark years where so many people were successfully suppressing the votes of minority groups throughout the South.
Nobody's votes are being suppressed. Talking about all the progress. That's another thing. Progressives. That's why they insist on being called progressives. Nobody wants to be against the people who are progressing society. Well, the truth is they're regressives, my friends. In fact, if you look at the ideology of these so-called progressives, it is an ideology that's lost. It's an old ideology. It's one that existed prior to even the American Revolution, where the ruling class tells the people beneath them, the subjects, the disgusting subjects of the elite ruling class, they're told what to do. They're second class. They're not even citizens. They're second class something. They're bottom of the barrel. These ruling class elites are going to tell you how to live your lives. They're progressing towards whatever they tell you is good for you. This is how this is viewed. I mean, these people are completely and utterly morally bankrupt. And they want you to believe that they're on the right side of this. They want a virtue signal. They want to They want to talk about things, but they just want to talk in such a way as it makes It makes average Americans think, wow, person cares. Of course that people don't want unfair representation. Who would want that? What does that mean, though? Partisan gerrymandering. Well, nobody wants that, but why can't state legislatures draw the lines at the districts where they want them? And why do people in minority groups get guaranteed districts where they're the majority? Why? Since when is that something that is good? Why is that progress? I understand throughout history, this country has done some despicable things regarding race and slavery and everything else. But the remedy for that was what we did when we fixed those things. The remedy for that is not now saying that group of people or whatever group of people get to have bonuses and advantages according to law that others don't. Folks, I've got to go. Have a great day. Thanks for listening, SDG.